Good evening, everyone. Today we have a very prolific poet with us who has also been an ex IIT India from Delhi. Let us welcome on board Reena Kapoor. Hello, Reena ji. Very warm greetings from Poet's Choice
Hello.
and welcome to the show. It's a pleasure to have you here tonight, actually, today in case of USA. And I'd like to begin the show by asking you about how you started out with your journey of writing.
Hi, Akshay. And thank you so much for having me on. Um, it's a pleasure to be here. And well, that's a big question because I started my journey really not as a writer. As you know, as you mentioned, I was a techie and really spent my time on all things technical for most of my life and career. It's really in the last 10 years that I found myself writing more and more. I always used to write a little here and there ever since my college days, but in the last 10 years, I really started writing and poetry started coming out, um, in many different ways, in many different forums. And then about 2 years ago, friends and family started urging me to start publishing it because I just had a collection of 50 odd poems and I had done nothing with it. And it's really from their urging that I sort of got my start and, pushed forward into publishing. And then, and since then, I've really been putting my poetry out there. And of course, as you know, Poet's Choice was very kind to publish one of my recent poems. And here I am.
Oh, that's really kind of you to join us today.
My pleasure.
After reading a lot about you, I come to know that it's really a prestigious moment for me and a privilege to have you here. So, before moving on into the writing journey that you shared with us, that has been your journey since the last 10 years, I'd like to know something about you as a background about you. I came to know there's a lot of interesting things in there itself, like you've been to 8 different schools in your youth. Since your father was a doctor in the Indian Army. So, what was your experience changing schools and just hopping around, from one place to another? It must have been something of a journey which one would really not come across very frequently.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, Akshay, that's a good point. Actually, you've done your research. Yes, I grew up, as I like to call it, an army brat. My father was, as you mentioned, a doctor in the army, in the Indian Army. So I grew up all over India. When somebody asks me, where are you from? I sort of say I'm from Delhi, but I'm really not from Delhi. I'm really from many different parts of India. And yeah, changing schools, I think I didn't know any better at the time. So growing up, I thought this is normal for everyone, uh, this is just how life is. And I hopped around a lot. But I think in retrospect, that, had its positives and negatives, of course. It is kind of hard to go into a new city, make new friends, meet new people. But oddly, it also makes you comfortable with differences, with different types of people. And also it has sort of given me I sort of think of myself as a lifelong musafir. Partly because I've traveled so much and lived in so many different places. And I think I look for a commonality with people wherever I go. I don't think, who is, what background they're from, or what language do they speak, and or what, ethnicity or religion. It just doesn't matter to me. I look for common ground. But it does make me sort of step back and look at life as more of a journey, and people come and go. And I guess that's also partly, I in fact reflected on this very recently, that there's a reason that my first book of poetry is named Arrivals and Departures. That theme of being a traveler, theme of yeah, theme of being a traveler and a musafir is something that is part of me, and I hope to continue to travel and meet new people and embrace all sorts of differences everywhere. So yeah, that is definitely an essence of my life and my work.
What's your journey after your education? I mean to say, when you shifted to USA as a techie, was that something of a contrast to what you had lived so far when you were studying? Like, I don't believe you traveled in USA. You were stationed in one city. I'm assuming that I might be wrong over here.
Yeah. So I actually, sorry. So I actually went to the US 30 plus years ago. I've been there a long time. And I went there, you're right, as an engineer. After I graduated from college, I went to the United States for a master's degree in engineering. So very different from my life now, but I worked as an engineer. I've actually been a techie for a long time, and I live in Silicon Valley now. But I've lived in different parts of the United States. I've lived in the middle of the country, which is the Midwest, for 11 years, and have been in Silicon Valley for the past 20 years. So even within the US, I've seen different parts of the country and different people and different, groups and different ways of living. And that theme continues. I still love to travel, and with the last couple of years with COVID, it has been hard, but that urge to travel comes out, and I find my way here and there. But in some ways, I've lived longer in the US now than I did in India. So I sort of consider myself from both places, which I'm very comfortable with, because like I mentioned, I grew up in so many different parts of India that I was in Chennai, which was known as Madras then, and I lived in Pune and in Delhi and in Lucknow and in Jammu and Kashmir. So I wasn't from anywhere and I was from everywhere, and I feel like that theme continues, that I'm from everywhere and nowhere in some ways.
I had noted down that question across, which you just put forth for me from what I read, and that is from in your writing that you do. Achha, there is a comment here from Bhila Vadre, if I'm pronouncing. I hope this conversation is recorded and we can watch later. Yes, very much. You can watch it later. And I'd like to take this opportunity to welcome all. I see there are quite a few people who have joined us by now. And I thank you all for joining in.
Thank you.
Yes, coming back. I was going to ask you, in your work, and despite having lived in USA and having that kind of youth where you've traveled, do you seek an identity? That I'll elaborate what I mean by that. Does your work voyage through the sea of possibilities and probabilities in search of something firm, something that which you can hold on to, believing to be the only perspective which you can associate your life with?
Is there
something?
Yeah.
Yes.
That's a great question. Yeah, thank you, Akshay. That's a good question. I find that in some ways, like I said, I'm from India and I'm from America. I sort of blend two in so many different ways. I feel like my heart is Indian, my mind is American, and I consider my spirit my own. That's sort of my motto in life. But I think the thing that anchors me the most and always will is relationships. With family and friends. With my husband, I have a daughter, and with other parts of members of my family. Much of my family is still in India, and then very close friends everywhere in the United States as well as in India. I think the anchoring really comes from relationships. That is really my anchor. And in some ways, I like to say, my home is wherever I am. But it's really the people and the feeling of that, and the anchoring of those relationships that keeps me grounded.
Interesting. So, can we take this moment to hear some of your work, like maybe a poem from our book, or you might like to read out from anything else that you wrote recently? Would you like
Yeah.
to share something?
Yeah, I would love to actually read from this book. And it's funny that we just talked about relationships, because this was the anthology of poems that Poet's Choice published. It was an anthology. The theme is close friends and relatives, which obviously resonates with me beautifully. And the poem actually that I wrote and that you published, that Poet's Choice published, is called My Butterfly. And it's not a poem that I've read elsewhere before, and it's relatively newer. It's not published in my book. So I would love to read that out. It is actually a poem that I wrote for my daughter as she was finishing high school, and as I anticipated her flying away like a butterfly who was spreading her wings. So, with your permission, I can read from this book, that poem.
Please, carry on, carry on.
Okay.
We love
The poem is My Butterfly. Yeah, My Butterfly. Story begins over 3 decades ago. Simple boy meets girl romance tale. Gratitude for this love, a vow. To be thankful, come what may. Ah, not so fast, said life. Much more's in store for you. You crazy adventure seeker. A precious voyage awaits you too. So off we went in search of that promise. A little bundle we longed to hold. Where is she? Who is she? Is she born yet? When can we bring her home? Then one day a letter arrived, announced, we have a baby girl for you. A single photo of a precious little face, big eyes to a soul we instantly knew. Our daughter awaits us. How'd this world get so wide? Let's bring her home. Let's get on, dear life. Jumped on a plane, clutching that photo. Laughter, excitement, and easy tears. Offloaded at last on Delhi in November. No sleep came that night as hopes feared. Two hearts ready to stake our claim. Now that the morning of promise had arrived, endless our wait as time slowed down, our fates laid bare for the universe to decide. Then she arrives gurgling, Miss Bright, with sweetest of twinkles and smiles galore, riding regally on her old caregiver's arm, who'd borne witness to such unions before. Before we knew it, she was in my lap. She found my eyes and we were one. Blew raspberries gleefully at my awe, pat and giggled knowing I was her mom. What are you waiting for? Still gurgling, she looked askance, while we cried helpless tears. Was this fate, kismet, or pure lucky chance? Our daughter is here, she's home, she's ours. Laughing out loud as we cried, declared to the world, come and meet her, bear witness to this wonder in our universe. Years have flown since that fateful day. Echoes of that voyage fill every hole. From her first ma and da and step and play, to a heart so big and her gentle soul. A wise man once said, Mother is the first guru, but it's her humor and heart that refreshes my view. In her wake I have lessened an impatience I had. Now my trust runs deeper, a daily gratitude. Sometimes I think of the mother of my Meera's birth. What was her tragedy to have suffered her part? I may never know her story, her reasons in this life. Yet she remains cherished, a sister of my heart. Sometimes a little light, a lively, graceful ray, brings with her all that power to erase the darkest shadows away. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure hearing you read it. That's something which the audience here, I'm sure, would not get the pleasure to listen to, because they'll be reading it with their own voice, and listening it from the voice of a poet is something completely different.
Thank you.
Now,
Thank you.
I came across this line in one of the reviews in the India Currents. This blog had written, blog, or is it a
It's a
tabloid? I'm not sure. It's an online tabloid?
Yeah,
Okay.
it's a magazine. Yes.
Okay. So in this, I'm led by my inner voice. Now, you know what? I also call my work to be coming out from my inner voice. So I'm always curious when somebody who I come across says this. So I'd like to know. So what drives this inner voice to come to the surface and pour out as ink onto paper?
That's a
really how.
I know. Yeah. That's
It
a really
might be a
hard
difficult question, but
I don't have a good answer. I know it's my inner voice because when I started writing 10 years ago, I was not writing for anyone, just for myself, and it was just whatever I felt like writing. And I showed it, to a few, like, very close family and friends, and they were like, "Oh, this is good," and I just kept writing. I didn't really think about anything else. So I'm not writing for any topic that's current or any issues that I think are important. It's really whatever I feel as a reaction to what's happening in my life, or it might be current events that I feel a reaction to. But I guess when I say inner voice, I just don't. I don't think about how good it is or how presentable it is, and it's only very recently that most people have even seen my book, because once I published my book, a lot of people saw what I had written. So it's very, so far it's been very intrinsically driven, and it's hard because once you start publishing, start reading other people's poetry and you start seeing what is being published, it's hard to keep that pure and start to sort of pull back and say, I'm not going to necessarily be influenced by what's popular or what's working or what's getting published, but really keep focused on what is coming to me naturally. So in some sense, it's about just keeping that balance. And I'm, like I said, I've had a very different career, and I'm not necessarily looking to take this someplace. I don't have a external goal in my mind that I should accomplish this by this date or this time. So in some sense, I'll keep writing because I feel like it, and write about what I feel. And in that sense, I want to keep it purely my voice and my desire to say something versus what people might want to hear.
Actually, what I'm doing here, I'd like to let you know,
Yes,
is that I'm making our audience and people out there know you as a person, know you, what drives you, what is it that how you get the poems that you write out of you. it's a really powerful sentiment to be able to know the poet. The poet can be read, their work can be found, their everything can be known, but the poet themselves can only be known via this medium. And that is why I'm putting more emphasis on such things where you can be known to the audience of where your work is coming from, and how it will help them in their life to imbibe what you are giving them.
Right.
And that's something which adds productivity to the whole conversation that we are having tonight.
Yeah.
Morning over there in USA.
Yeah. Well, thank you for doing it, because it's wonderful, and I've seen the Instagram handle on which you've done all these different conversations with so many different poets, and it's just beautiful work. And you're right in that you get to know a poet after listening to the conversations and where they're coming from, and the diversity of poets I've come across through your conversations and through these chats that you've done has really been wonderful. So thank you for including me, because there have been some real talent on your show. So
we are not dying. We are not leaving you so soon. So we had one poet recently called Mark Tochen on 30th September, and his life story was on the similar lines as you, as in he traveled to 10 US states because his father was again in the Navy.
Okay.
So he needed to be transferred from one place to the other.
Yeah.
So coming back, there is something very interesting which you have here. Again, from the tabloids, I picked this line up, that you're plagued by self-doubt. So now, I'd like to put this across, what do you think the other writers in the world who are bestsellers, who are very well known, what is the difference between you and them? Do you think that they don't have self-doubt when they write?
Yeah, good question. Actually, from everything I've read and all the interviews I've seen and read of writers and creative people everywhere, I think all of us are plagued by self-doubt. I think that's just the condition of being a creative, because when I wrote my poetry, honestly, I just didn't even think I would ever publish it. I didn't write for that reason. And anytime I wrote something, I didn't even think it was worthy of sharing. I shared it with very few people. And honestly, even now when I write, I'm like, oh, this is not so good. And I just let it be. And I have a inner circle of,
You have a fragility, a little vulnerability to criticism. Is it?
Yeah.
And you're reflective when somebody tells you, you start considering that whether it is true or not, and whether what you've written. Again, this comes back, to the first point that we put across about finding a foundation stone, a firmness that I'd asked you that got imbibed in you through your life.
Yeah.
It seems that it is all interlinked. Of course. And it's really a gift, it isn't something to be apprehensive about or not like. It is something which not everybody has with them. And sometimes that comes out as the golden quality in the writer who writes a best-selling book for readers to read. And I just needed to say that to you when we are in conversation with each other, because it will really, I'm sure it helps you in overcoming that self-doubt and always be open-minded to being positively open-minded to the quality of being self-doubtful. And not being pessimistic about it. This is a weakness of mine or something. Just clarifying it, it is a strength.
Yeah.
I really like to.
Yeah. No, I think very insightful, Akshay. I think that makes sense. But you always write something and you think, oh, I don't know if this is good enough or not, but you share it because you want to know, what does it resonate? Do people read it and think, I don't know, I've not had that experience, or somebody says, I had that experience and that's how I felt, or thank you for putting into words what I've felt all along. And absolutely, when I hear that, it is a huge help. Sometimes people think, I don't know if my comments matter or my reading something and responding matters. Absolutely matters. We are all social beings. We care. And we are on this earth for a short time. And if we can find resonance with each other in the way we live our lives, that is precious.
So I'll over here I'd like you to share with our viewers about a little bit about the play that you wrote, Art of the Possible.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yes.
So,
yeah, it was a short play that I wrote last year during COVID. So all theatre was shut down and it was performed on Zoom actually. And it was a play I wrote about a young woman who gets married, and then at some point she decides that marriage is not for her and it was a mistake that she made. And so now she has to persuade her parents and her in-laws that this decision to get out of the marriage is the right one, except that she doesn't have a good reason to give them, because they ask her, is your husband a bad man? Does he beat you? Is he abusive? Is he difficult? Is he boring? Is he not doing well in life? Like, what's going on? He says none of those reasons. It's just that marriage isn't right for me. And so she has a very difficult task of trying to persuade her family that she wants to get out and that they should support her. And finally, the reason it was called The Art of the Possible is because she comes up with a deal that she strikes with her mother-in-law to let her out of the marriage while helping the family save face, so that they are not embarrassed in front of society. And so she comes up with a unique negotiating tactic, which she negotiates with her mother-in-law, and makes it happen. So that's what it was. It was humor. It had a little bit of a message, but it was funny. It was meant to be comical, but also it was about this idea that marriage is a wonderful thing, but it's not for everybody, and it's not something that has to be only because the spouse is not abusive. That's not the only reason to get out of marriage. Sometimes it just isn't the right thing for somebody, and it's okay for the girl to say, I don't think this is right for me and I need to get out. And so then she's a smart woman. She comes up with a way to get out without causing too much pain for those around her. That was the first play I've ever written, and was performed on Zoom, and it was a great experience.
So we have one person say here, Reena's thoughts are absolutely precious and unique. Smiling Lolly. Who is that? I'll just give you the name also.
Thank you.
That is Lalita Khambampati. Sorry if I'm mispronouncing.
Yeah, she's a dear friend. Yeah, thank you, Lalita.
We have a few people here, and I'm utterly grateful to all of them who joined in.
Yes, so am I.
So, since you mentioned about marriage, firstly, I would like to mention that today it's the first day of Navratri. It's an Indian festival, which I'm sure people in the US will not be familiar with, and that is why you see the chandan tikka on my head. Yes. That is the puja we do today. And I wish everyone happy Navratri, and I wish you too.
Yes.
And so that brings us to the next question. Do you believe in rituals and religious festivals that are there in India? What are your views on that?
Yeah, so I'm very, I'm a bit of a mixed bag on that. I absolutely celebrate Diwali and Holi, and all of those are celebrated with great, gusto in my home. And I love, and of course, Christmas and, Eid and everything else that our friends celebrate. We are part of that as well in the US. And I think you'll be surprised to hear that Navratri is actually celebrated with great gusto in many amongst many Indian families in the US too. So, and it's quite well known. And as for me, I'm I I don't know that I believe in rituals per se, but I do believe in the power of celebration and the power of festivals and the power of tradition to keep us grounded. So I think when people do it, I'm not religious per se myself, but there's a real role for those things in our lives and keeping us grounded and keeping us connected to family and friends. And there's nothing more beautiful than going to a friend's house or a family member's house and celebrating together with them, no matter what they're celebrating. And those things, keep us bound to a community. And as I've grown older, I've seen more and more, like my daughter, for example, on Diwali, she's in college, and for Diwali, she always wants to come home. She always says, I want to be home for Diwali because, we're going to go to so-and-so's house and so-and-so's house. And so my husband and I always make it a point that we make a big deal out of it. And she wants to celebrate Christmas and she wants to celebrate Holi. And, so it's always something that brings the family together and friends together. And, lots of friends become family because, they're part of our lives in a very important way. So I'm a big believer in the power of that for keeping the community bound together.
I wasn't really sure whether you'll be so optimistic about answering in the strain that you have done. Frankly speaking, there's one person who just said here that Reena is a global citizen. Supriya said that.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. So, with that, I'd like you to put across if you have anything else to share with us. Maybe about some of your other poems that you'd like to read to us in Arrivals and Departures that you have published, or else anything that you'd like to say to everyone who's listening to you.
Yeah, I'll just say that I continue to write. I write a blog which is Arrivals and Departures .substack.com, and I really love it when I hear from people who find some resonance in my words. It's all, writers are lonely people, write and we throw it out there in the ether and we don't know if our words make any sense, or we are just speaking to ourselves. So I love hearing back from people. And of course my book is also called Arrivals and Departures. It is on Amazon.com. But mostly I'd just like to thank everyone who came here and attended this call and this video interview. It's been such a pleasure, and I want to thank you, Akshay, and I want to thank Poet's Choice for selecting my poem for your book, and also for doing this wonderful event and inviting me to be part of it. Like I said before, you've published some amazing poets, so I'm totally honored to be here. And keep doing the great work you do, because poets love it when they find community and when they find a place where their poems can find a home. So thank you for that.
So I'd like to firstly mention that the articles that were published in the India Currents were published by a few very known people, that is Dr. Manisha Sharma,
yeah,
Gitika Pathania Jain,
yes,
who is a PhD, And also, I'd like to check with you and take your approval if you'd be okay with us sharing this on YouTube and other social media platforms, including Instagram, uh, the video
Yeah,
that we are just having.
yeah,
And
sure.
also, you receive an official letter from us to grant us permission for this. And I'd like to conclude by thanking you and everybody who joined us. I don't seem to think there is anybody who has put across any questions to us, otherwise, I would have requested them to answer those questions. There is a comment here though about what you just said recent before you thanked me. Yes, they bring us about festivals. Yes, they bring us together with our loved ones and celebrate life over food and fun. Reena is one of the best hosts. So I think that same person had said that festivals make us eat really good food. So he's all of about he or she is all about festivals eating good food. And I agree with that person because there is a variety about each festival. There is a specific food which is associated with
That's right.
every
Yes,
festival.
yes.
Like how it is with poetry, there are different forms of poems when those who are more technically and um, academically associated with poems, they do know that there are certain seasons for certain kind of poems that they should write. Like for example, I there was a time when I enjoyed writing haiku and three-liner poems a lot. And
Right,
then the season changed where I would like to write Clary Hues. Clary Hue is a form of poem where you um, write about a particular poet, but you do make a little bit of teasing or fun about the poet.
the poet. Yeah,
Yes.
that's great.
And then there was a time when there was scanning. Scanning is like
Yeah,
a single word which we define into two words over a number of lines. There is just two words in each line after which
right,
defines that single word.
right.
Word.
Wonderful.
Okay, before we leave, I forgot to ask you: is there anybody who you'd like to invite to give a review about the work or talk about you who might be there on this show tonight? Or I mean, right
Uh,
now,
invite somebody to do what? I'm sorry.
to talk about you who knows you well, or maybe about your work. Is there
Uh,
anybody? I'll share with you who all are there if you would like to
so
invite him.
I,
If you're comfortable with that, firstly I need to ask you that.
I
There is
think,
Supriya Kapoor over here.
yeah, Supriya is my
Yeah.
sister. So I don't think that's that not my sister because that would not be very objective. But maybe
Okay.
I see Shubhra. Maybe Shubhra can speak. I don't know if Shubhra is
Subhra.
comfortable speaking. Shubhra Sri.
Subhra Srivastav. Is that right?
Yeah, I see Shubhra.
Subhra Srivastav.
I can't see
I'll
every.
invite her to talk a few words about you, and then she can say bye bye. Is that okay? I'll do that if you permit.
If Shubhra is comfortable with it, absolutely.
I'll invite her. Let's see if she has anything to say. I don't know.
She says I'm not in a presentable state.
Oh, okay. Then we'll leave it. She can excuse the invitation, I
That's okay.
suppose.
Maybe Lalita.
That's
I see Lalita.
okay. Then let me look at that.
My,
Lalita.
I see. I can't see everyone. I'm sorry. You can see.
Lalita is there. I'll invite her. If she's also okay, we can have. You're going to feed Reena all Navrata's food this time, and she is in the India. That's Supriya. So she declined. Okay, so it's okay. We'll end this show tonight then by thanking everyone once again, and have a great day ahead or a great evening ahead. And thank you.
Thank you so much. And thank you to everyone for coming. I really, really appreciate that. Thank you, Akshay. And we'll talk soon. Okay. Bye. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.